So today we're going to be taking a look at creating a photo blend between a fish and a cat. We're going to start out with our image of the goldfish, and we're going to look to expand out our canvas size so that we can have a little bit more room to work with. To adjust the canvas size, we're going to go up to Image, top navigation, Canvas Size. For canvas size, we can adjust. I'm going to switch my measurements into pixels, and for my width, we're going to adjust up to 1300. And my height, we're going to expand just out to 800. Once I have my width at 1300 and height at 800, I click OK. I'm going to just use the Move tool to slide the goldfish over to the right side for right now. Then we want to go over to the tab of our cat. For the cat image, we're looking to select out the cat, separating it from the white background. A couple different ways we can do this. We can use a quick selection tool, selecting inside the cat. The magic wand, we could select on the white and then invert our selection. Or for this assignment, we're going to use the object selection. Fourth tool, left side navigation. If I click and drag over top of the cat, Photoshop will do a great job of recognizing the overall cat shape. Then we can either use the Move tool, click and drag it over to the fish tab, or I can hit Control or Command C, which is copy, go over to the tab of the fish, Control V or Command V to paste the cat in. Now that we have our cat, we're going to look to now see how we can blend these two together. What I'm going to look to do is take the front portion of the cat and the rear and fins of the fish to assemble it into one image. First, we're going to use the cat and look to cut off the tail and the hind leg. I can use the rectangle marquee tool, second tool, left side navigation, click and drag over top of the area of the hind leg and the tail, and simply hit backspace, cutting it out. I can deselect. Once it's deselected, we're going to look to scale up our cat so it fits better to the body of our fish. I can hit Command or Control T, depending on if you're a Mac or PC. But what I'm looking to do is get the top edge of the cat to line up to the top edge of the fish, not including the fin, and the bottom edge of the cat to line up to the bottom edge of our fish. So I can make adjustments, slightly drop it down, but I do want to have the fur of the cat running over top the entire body of our fish. Once I have that relatively in place, I can make slight adjustments if I wanted to expand it a little bit further. I have the cat blocking out the rest of our fish. Now I can hit enter to place it. Now we're going to look to get into creating out a blend. So we have to eliminate out areas of the cat that expand past the body of our fish. To do this, we're first going to add a layer mask onto our cat. We can go down to the bottom of the layers panel, click add layer mask, that little white square black circle, and we see a white box appear next to our cat. Now that I have this layer mask, it will help protect the overall image. We're not going to be erasing the actual image, but just hiding areas out. Then we're going to hold down Control or Command and click on the thumbnail, the layer thumbnail of our fish. When you do this, it will actually select out right around the object that we're selecting on. So we're looking to select out the fish. Again, Command or Control T, Command or Control, and just click on this little thumbnail. We see the dotted lines appear around the outside of the fish. Now that we have the outside of the fish, we need to invert our selection. To invert our selection, we're going to go up to Select at the top navigation and Inverse. Then we're going to look to use the eraser to erase out these edges of the cat that are appearing outside of the fish's body in the back half. So I'm going to go over to the eraser tool, left side navigation. And right now my current brush size has a hardness drop down to 45%. Size-wise, we can always adjust using the right or left bracket on your keyboard next to the P key. But you do want to pay attention to your opacity, in which we're going to be adjusting back and forth as we go further into blending in the rest of the cat. But for right now, my opacity is at 100%. My hardness doesn't necessarily matter as we're erasing on the outside. But if I again want to adjust the size of my brush, the right or left bracket. Right bracket makes your brush bigger, left bracket makes your brush smaller. I'm going to erase out the area of our cat over the top of the back of the fish. And if I do want to push up my hardness and get a little bit sharper lines, just getting a cleaner erase, I'm just going to go back over a couple areas and make sure that it erased out clearly. So now that I have the back erased, now I'm going to look to deselect. Command or Control D, depending on if you're a Mac or PC. Now that we have these areas erased out, now we're going to try creating the blend. The idea of creating this blend, I want to reveal the fins of our fish, but have the hair of our cat cover up all the scales of our fish. So I'm going to go over back to my eraser tool, left side navigation, 12th icon down, depending on the arrangement that you have. But with the eraser tool, I'm going to drop my hardness down to 0 and drop my opacity to 50%. Because I dropped the opacity, it's not going to be a quick erase. It's going to smoothly erase out areas so we build out the overall shape. So if I go back to the tail and I click and drag down, you start to see how it's going to erase out gently. I go over top of it a few times to make it blend nicely, erasing out the areas of the cat that I don't want. Again, I do want to reveal most of the tail and bring back some of the fins. I can click and drag or adjust the size of my brush if I need to get down into smaller areas. Again, just going over a few times till it disappears. And if I go too far, if I start to reveal some scales, we can always paint areas back in. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So we see that I have erased out a little bit too much. I took away some fur. We'll see how we can adjust that shortly. But it's just a matter of going over the areas a few times to make sure that they are completely visible. At the top area, I can reveal over top, leaving the fin. But we see that the hair is still covering up all the scales. But it comes out to creating out a nicer blend. If we do have an accident, if we do erase out too much in a certain area, we can see how I erase out in the middle. I see the scales. I can go over to the paintbrush tool. And with the paintbrush tool, I still have the layer mask selected over on the layers panel. And we want to make sure that our fill color is white, our background color is black. The fill color has to be white because we're painting white into our layer mask. We're not actually painting the color, we're not painting fur. But when I use this white, it covers up those areas of the fur. Just clicking, dragging over top of this section. And I can touch up little areas, adjusting. My opacity is at 100%. If I wanted a softer edge, I could always drop down the opacity at the top navigation. Drop it down to 50%, and then I can paint in some more areas of the fur. So now that I have a nice overall blend, the one issue is that the cat and the goldfish don't necessarily match. So if I want to make adjustments, we're going to look to recolor the areas of the goldfish. So you're going to select back on the goldfish layer. It always helps to rename your layers just so you don't get them mixed up. But with the fish layer selected, we're going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. With Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, we can get into modifying out our color. If I wanted to get more of this tan, brownish color of the calico cat, we can look to drop down our settings. I'm going to go back down to about -10 for our hue. And as I drop, with my saturation, it's taking away that brighter orange and making it more of a brownish tone that starts to resemble a little bit closer to the calico's fur. And again, you just have to find what you think looks best overall. I think I have a good blend around -35. And I can also take a look at my lightness, see if it needs to make any adjustments, but I'm pretty satisfied with it overall. So for myself, nice little blend to create out our catfish. So overall, it's very easy to work with these tools. It's just a matter of taking your time to make sure that the blends look clean, look professional, look unified overall. Now that we have our catfish assembled, we're going to take a look at how we can create out a splash and watermelon, combining into a watermelon of literal terms. So we go over to our melon image, and you can see that there is a watermark over this image, just protected image. We're going to take out areas of this so we don't necessarily need it. But we want to modify our canvas size as well. To modify our canvas size, we're going to go up to Image, Top Navigation, Canvas Size. With Canvas Size, I'm going to again switch over to Pixels. And I'm going to look to expand a lot higher overall, but I will give it a little bit width. So I'm going to put it up to 1,000 for our pixels. And my height, I'm going to change to 1,000 as well. And when I click OK, it does show a black background. Understand that this black background is because we had our layer locked. If we ever want to unlock our layer, move or make adjustments to this area, we can unlock the layer. And now that our layer is unlocked, I'm going to use our move tool to click and drag our watermelon down towards the bottom of our canvas. But we do have some areas that we need to fix. I'm going to go over to left side navigation, click on our paint bucket tool. With the paint bucket tool, all I'm going to do is click in the areas that I want to fill with white. And we don't want to overdo it, or else you'll notice that when I click a third time, it starts to cover up the reflection happening. But I can always hit Command or Control Z to undo. But now we're going to zoom in on the watermelon. And we're going to look to take out the red area of our watermelon. To do this, we're going to go over to our polygon lasso tool. And with the polygon lasso tool, we're going to be drawing in this yellowish white area between the red and between the green. And we can take our time just clicking point by point. It's a little bit easier than trying to draw it out with the lasso tool. But I just want to make sure I stay pretty accurate, making sure that all the red is covered and filled. And even with it being perfect in the selection that you make, unfortunately Photoshop sometimes does have an issue of creating the perfect blend and erasing out the middle of the selection that we create. But we'll get there in a moment. So once I get all the way around the object, we get that dotted line. This represents that we have the area selected. With this area selected, we're all going to go up to Edit at the top navigation, down to Fill. And for our contents, we're not going to fill it in with a color, but we're going to click on the drop down for contents and change it to Content Aware. With Content Aware, when I click OK, Photoshop does a great job of recognizing the area overall. And because we didn't get close to the red, we see that all the red has been eliminated. But there are a couple little issues that I do want to touch up. And unfortunately, sometimes you may end up getting an entire stem or parts of the bottom of the green melon inside of the selected area. But if we want to touch up any areas, I can deselect, Command or Control D. If I want to get rid of this little piece over here, I'm going to click point by point with the polygon lasso tool, just repeating the process that we just did. I go back up to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and you see that it smooths out that overall area. I can deselect. Then I'm just going to also do this for the bottom edge of our melon, just because I don't like this harsh line happening through it. And I'm not selecting a large part, I'm just staying on and around the area that I want to eliminate. If you select too large of an area, it's going to recognize larger areas outside of it. But with the small area selected, I go back up to Edit, Fill, and Content Aware. And it smooths out everything, but it did put this darker piece of green in here. So I'm going to deselect, just redraw around this area. And again, Edit, Fill, Content Aware. And now you see that it has now disappeared. It's a smooth overall area, erasing out all the red inside of our melon. Now that we have all the area erased outside the melon, we're going to go over to our splash image. For our splash image, we don't need to erase it or separate it from the white background. What we're going to do is just use the Move tool, first tool left side navigation, click and drag the splash up to the tab of our melon, but don't let go until you drop it onto the middle of our melon image. If you drop it onto the canvas, Photoshop isn't going to recognize that it's part of the canvas, and you have to repeat the process. But with our melon brought into the image, now we want to create the sense that the water is inside of the melon. Rather than using the eraser tool and trying to get all the little details inside the drips and splash, what we're going to do is use our blend modes. Over in the layers panel, where it says normal, I'm going to click on the drop down and change this to multiply. You could use other variations as well. Linear burn works as well. You can go darken, but for myself, I like the multiply, how it looks. Now that I have multiply on, if I move this around, you can see that it is creating that transparency where any white was. It's now see-through, but we want to fit this water better to the area. I'm first going to look to modify the shape. I can either go edit, transform, scale, rotate, or I can go to free transform where I can do scale and rotate at the same time. Or the shortcut key is to hit Command or Control T. With Command or Control T, this allows me to be able to adjust the size, making it larger, which I first do want to make sure that it gets the width of our melon. But if I want to get into scaling it a little bit larger on top and bottom, I'm going to want to hold down Shift so it maintains the width overall of the shape that I just created. So I'm just going to click and drag the bottoms, but holding Shift. I can rotate. Just go over to a little bit outside. We'll see this little double arrow appear. And again, still not quite where I want it to be. If I want to make larger adjustments, I can keep scaling up. Or you may want to right click directly on the transform area and hit warp. With warp, it puts it into more of a grid system. With the grid system, it's going to block it off. We see these anchor points. And I'm going to zoom out just so we can see it a little bit better. But with this warp, I can get into modifying any of the anchor points or grabbing areas inside of the actual box. When I click and drag up, you can see how that grid appears. And I can subtly tweak each of these anchor points on the outside so it expands into the inside of the melon. Or I can click larger areas of the melon to pull it down to fit better overall into the shape. So you can see as I'm just tweaking through this warp, it gets better fitted to our overall melon shape. But you just keep tweaking until you're satisfied with the overall look. Once I'm satisfied with the design, I can hit return or enter to place that water. Now that I have this combination, we have the splash, we have the melon, we now have a watermelon. We want to look to save our work. We can go to File, either save a copy, save it as a PNG, or you can go File, Export, and say export as a PNG. But I hope you enjoyed, and good luck with your photo blending.